the time is now, the time is here. Now's the time for a bite of cheer. A tasty life where the price is right. Well, look at here, you'll dig this sight. The moment's handy for a piece of candy. Just name your brand, they're all so grand. Hey, what do you think of a nice cool drink? Or a big box filled with a popcorn thrill? Let your taste buds meet with an ice cream treat. Refresh yourselves, it's time to eat. So come on folks, let's join the band as we all head for the refreshment stand.
Tonight on the Idle Hour, we have another case of Hollywood telling its own story. A few episodes back, we explored another such tale when we featured the 1950 film All About Eve. Well, that movie was about show business, mostly the stage, and the biting and the clawing and the scheming that goes into the making of a star. Well, now we're giving some love and attention to the not-so-happily ever-after story of stardom in Sunset Boulevard. Sunset Boulevard and All About Eve were contenders for the 1950 Academy Award for Best Picture. All About Eve came out on top. Did the Academy get it right? We'll come to our own conclusions. Then, after tonight's trivia question, I want to talk about planning and planners. My personal planning cycle follows the academic calendar, so I'm gathering all my planning stuff to start fresh again in July. But when do personal planning systems become a thing? I'm not sure if I'm ready for the year ahead, but you know what I am ready for, Mr. DeMille? My close-up. Tonight on the Vintage Century Idle Hour.
Please welcome our host, Jennifer Passarello.
Thank you, Rodney. How has your week been going? What's new?
It's been a busy week, learning my new job and everything. I've been listening to earlier episodes of this show.
Oh, you have?
Yeah, to get a feel for your style.
Well, I love how seriously you're taking this job, Rodney. I think you're doing great, by the way. Everyone, please meet Rodney, my AI-generated announcer and superfan.
Hello, everyone. So Jennifer, I noticed you put a new video out on our YouTube channel.
Yeah, I did. Thanks for bringing that up. Listeners, if you're interested in some behind-the-scenes info about the Vintage Century Idle Hour, I did put up a short video about it on our YouTube channel.
I do need to ask you about something.
Oh, sure, Rodney. What's up?
I was going through some of the files Lorenzo left behind, and it looks like he had lined up a couple of new pretend sponsors for the show that he had planned to talk to you about.
Oh, really? Well, I'm actually glad to hear that. You know, our last pretend sponsor was the Swapmaster 500 Fly Swatter. And, well, that was just so off-brand. You know what I mean? As I told Lorenzo at the time, I think our brand is more aligned with products and services that are elegant and sophisticated. Don't you agree?
I do.
I mean, fly swatters are just not a match.
So true.
So what did he have lined up?
Well, it looks like he had a few public service announcements.
Oh, PSAs?
Yes.
I'm not sure that's what I had in mind either. What sort of PSAs are they?
Let's see. There's one here about returning shopping carts to the cart corrals in the parking lots of supermarkets. It's called Leaving Carts Astray. You are better than that.
Well, that is a good message, actually, but no, that's not really for us. What else?
Here's one about personal hygiene. Lorenzo left a note with this one. He wrote, "Body odor in public is a crime against humanity."
I don't think I like the sound of that one either. Are there any others?
One more. This one is from the National Safety Council. It has to do with wearing seatbelts.
Well, maybe that would be okay. Does he have a note with that one?
I think so. Ah, yes, here we are. It says, "Behold the miraculous seatbelt." This kind of belt may not keep your pants up, but it will keep your bottom down in the event of a crash.
Oh my, is that all of them?
Yes.
Well, they're just terrible, all of them. But honestly, anything's better than that fly swatter thing, so let's go with the seatbelts. But I don't want to do an ad about seatbelts not keeping pants up.
Not to worry, I just found a recorded message from the Safety Council. I can cue that up for later in the show.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks, Rodney. You know, this will be our third pretend sponsor since January.
Wow, it seems that pretend sponsors are lining up to be on the show.
Well, something like that. Tonight's Silver Screen Adventure takes us to Sunset Boulevard, a 24-mile-long street that stretches across Los Angeles, running through Hollywood, Beverly Hills, and the Pacific Palisades. Now, it bears mentioning that this is a real street. Not because you don't already know that, I think everybody already knows that, but because it's such a perfect title for this film. And the fact that it's an actual location for our story, well, that's just sort of miraculous. The story itself is about mortality and fragility and transience, about fading stardom, about one woman's desperate clinging to the bright lights of yesterday. What's a sunset? Well, it's the gradual darkening of the day, a winding down, a closing of an era. If we were trying to be poetic, and I guess I am trying to be poetic, we might say that the sun is the star of the day, and at sunset, it has one last burst of color before dropping beneath the horizon, lost to the night. We have one of the perfect titles in all film history, in my opinion, and it also happens to be the setting of our story. I'll be honest, I'm not all that familiar with the Los Angeles metro area. I've been there a couple of times, but always for work. And I didn't really do all that much exploring other than to go to Disneyland because, well, of course. You know, I don't think I've mentioned on this podcast before that I am a Disney theme park fanatic. But let's set that aside. That's a topic for another day. Anyway, shocking that it may be, I don't know much about Hollywood, so I've been doing some reading about Sunset Boulevard and also the Sunset Strip. Now, I saw a post on Reddit that said Sunset Boulevard is deader than dead, with nothing more than tourists everywhere. Now, I don't know about the deader than dead sentiment, but the part about the tourists is probably true. I mean, this is one of the most famous streets in the whole world. Maybe this person was talking about the Sunset Strip, which is not the same. It's a smaller segment of Sunset Boulevard. And it's my understanding that the Sunset Strip has a lot of nightclubs and things like the Viper Room. I've heard of that. You know, it's definitely not my scene. It's not really an interest of mine. I would rather turn my attention back to the Golden Age Hollywood stuff that took place on Sunset Boulevard. So several stars lived on and around Sunset Boulevard back in the day, including Marilyn Monroe, Frank Sinatra, John Wayne, Howard Hughes, Elizabeth Taylor, John Barrymore, and Errol Flynn. Now, here are just a few of the famous landmarks on Sunset Boulevard that are of interest to me. And actually, this is a fairly long list. I'm just going to mention a few of them here. The Beverly Hills Hotel, the Chateau Marmont Hotel, the Hollywood Palladium Theater, and Crossroads of the World. This is an open-air shopping mall that was built in 1936. I think it was the first open-air shopping mall. And it's now, I guess, an office complex, but it's undergoing some revitalization. Now, what about Norma Desmond's mansion? Okay, so Norma Desmond is the name of our fading star protagonist in Sunset Boulevard, the film, and her mansion is located there. That's where much of this story takes place. Is that a real mansion on Sunset Boulevard? Well, it is a real or it was a real mansion, but that's not where it was filmed. So only her driveway gate was on Sunset Boulevard, and I don't know if it's still there or not, but they know the exact address. 10060 Sunset Boulevard is where that driveway gate was. The mansion itself was actually on South Irving Boulevard in Midtown Los Angeles. Now, it has since been demolished. What a tragedy that is. You know, one of the things that I love to do when I'm on vacation is tour old mansions. So if I ever am to find myself in Los Angeles again, I would have made a beeline for that mansion, but it's no longer there. Now, you know, when I start researching these things, I end up falling down every rabbit hole you can imagine. And I have a thing for mansions, so let's just go all in on that. Here's what Wikipedia has to say about that mansion, the mansion where the movie was filmed. That house was designed by American civil engineer and architect Thomas Beverly Klein Jr., who, or Keim. Is it Keim or Klein? I guess it's Keim. So Thomas Beverly Keim Jr., who committed suicide soon after its completion. This was back in 1926. So, wow, 100 years ago. It cost $250,000 at the time. That would be about $4.4 million today. William Jenkins, a wealthy American expatriate living in Mexico, lived at the residence with his family for only 1 year. Sidebar. Okay, so, you know, I tour a lot of old mansions and I read a lot about old mansions. And that is really such a common thing where enormous amounts of money will go into building these elaborate homes. And then they don't live there very long. They end up dying, or I don't know, their marriages fall apart. They hit upon hard times. And, you know, another recurring theme with these mansions is that they spare no expense in the building of them, but the maintenance of them is just astronomical. And I don't know if they never factored that in, or if they did fall upon the hard times and then they just couldn't, you know, maintain it. But that I see over and over again with these beautiful, elaborate old mansions. Not sure exactly what the case was here, but the fact that that family only lived there 1 year seems like it's par for the course. Well, anyway, the house sat vacant for a decade. Ooh, get this, prompting locals to dub the impressive edifice the Phantom House. It was sold to oil magnate John Paul Getty in 1936. The home was occupied by one of the 5 former Mrs. Gettys at the time of the 1950 filming of Sunset Boulevard by Paramount Studios. As a condition for the rental of the property, she requested that the studio build her a new swimming pool, which became the site of the famous scene with William Holden's floating corpse at the beginning of the film. Oh, hey, and it looks like the 1955 film Rebel Without a Cause, starring James Dean and Natalie Wood, was filmed there as well. Who knew? Okay, so we've explored the place. Now let's talk about the movie. Now, it's really hard not to make comparisons between Sunset Boulevard and All About Eve because they both paint these rather cynical, bleak pictures of show business or the business of show. Now, All About Eve was primarily centered on the New York stage, though Hollywood was a component of that story as well. After this episode, you might want to check out my episode on All About Eve, which was, oh gosh, I don't remember. What episode was that? Episode 9 of the Vintage Century Idol Hour. That one was called All About Eve. Now, Sunset Boulevard, on the other hand, is about an aging Hollywood film star. I always feel like both of these films seem to be Hollywood telling on itself. In All About Eve and Sunset Boulevard, we have 2 powerhouse films that were universally acclaimed. And as I had said in the opening, Both of them were up for Best Picture Academy Awards at the same time. And in the end, All About Eve blew all the contenders out of the water. It won for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor for George Sanders, Best Screenplay, Best Costume Design, and Best Sound Recording. Those were the wins, but there were 14 total nominations for All About Eve, altogether. For its part, Sunset Boulevard received 11 nominations. Okay, not too shabby. And it won for Best Story and Best Story and Screenplay, and also Best Art Direction. Both films are considered among the best ever made, and they were from the same year. Isn't that incredible? One of the things that sets these movies apart from one another is that they're categorized into different genres. All About Eve is your classic drama. Sunset Boulevard is sometimes categorized as a dark comedy / film noir. Now, the noir, I get. The comedy part, that's always a little surprising to me. I don't read it like a comedy. Now, it is over the top. It borders on absurd at times, absurd in a good way, but I don't really see the comedy in it. To me, it's tragedy through and through. Okay, so let's get to our stars of this incredible film. We've got Gloria Swanson as Norma Desmond. Now, she is a star from the silent era. Well, both of them, Gloria Swanson and Norma Desmond, but I'm talking about Norma Desmond here, is a star from the silent era who is all but forgotten. She's lost her marbles. She has delusions that she's going to make a comeback. She's just not quite with it. We can sense immediately there's something off about Norma Desmond. Now, Norma Desmond was not a real person, but that character was said to have been based on an actual silent film star, Norma Talmadge, who lived a reclusive life of her own. Now, Norma Talmadge died in 1957, but her heyday was in the 1920s. If it's true that the character of Norma Desmond is based on her, yikes, because that's not a flattering depiction. And Norma Talmadge was still alive when this movie came out. Well, this was a huge role for Gloria Swanson because she hadn't made a film in like 9 or 10 years. And then prior to that, she hadn't made any films since the early 1930s. But imagine what it must have been like to be an aging star in real life. Okay, so Gloria Swanson was an aging star in real life, playing the role of a has-been. I mean, I would think you would need to have a strong ego to take on that kind of a role. Apparently, Mae West was offered the role, and she turned it down for that very reason. She didn't want to play a has-been. So good for Gloria Swanson for, going ahead and taking that on. Or maybe it was just a matter of being desperate for the limelight again, at any cost, whether you're playing a has-been or not. I don't know. Hollywood types, hard to figure them out. Okay, so that's Gloria Swanson as Norma Desmond. Then we have William Holden. He's Joe Gillis. And Joe Gillis is a down-and-out screenwriter. Now, we first meet Joe as a floating corpse in Norma Desmond's pool. Yeah, so we know from the get-go that this story does not end well for old Joe. Now, a few episodes back, we learned the term in media res. That's a story structure in which the plot begins somewhere in the middle and then circles back to the beginning. Well, we have that here. So Sunset Boulevard presents us with a very non-linear plot line. We essentially begin near the end of the film and then circle back. Well, then we have Eric von Stroheim. He plays Max von Mayerling, Norma Desmond's odd butler. And there's more to him than meets the eye. And then we have Nancy Olson as Betty Schaefer. She's a script reader and the would-be girlfriend of Joe. Now, we also have some famous folks that make an appearance as themselves in this film. Cecil B. DeMille is one. Hedda Hopper is another. And then there's this kind of bizarre scene where there's a group of old stars playing bridge there at the mansion. Well, these really are old stars from the silent era. So we had Buster Keaton, Anna Nielsen, and H.B. Warner, and they were all playing themselves. All right, those are our main cast members. We had a director, of course, and that was Billy Wilder. Now, if you've tuned into this show before, you know that I have an annoying habit of tying everything back to the television series The Twilight Zone. Yeah, I have to do it again tonight. I'm sorry, everyone. It has to be done. There's an excellent episode from 1959 entitled The 16mm Shrine, written by Rod Serling and starring Ida Lupino, that presents its own take on the toll of stardom on the psyche of the stars. I highly recommend watching that one if you haven't already. It makes a very nice companion to Sunset Boulevard. Okay, so that gives us our background. Now let's take a short musical break. Oh, and also, hear a word from our sponsor, me. I'm my own sponsor. And hey, if you're listening out on YouTube and you like this show, would you please take a moment and click on the subscribe button? That would be a huge vote of confidence for me and the best way to support this little show. And that might also help you find this show again. It is so small that it can very easily get lost in the YouTube universe. Well, I'll meet you on the other side for tonight's story, 1950s Sunset Boulevard. Back in a moment. Hey, listeners. Most of you are tuning in from the major podcast platforms like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Thank you so much for doing that. You know, this show is a creative outlet for me, and to think that there are people actually listening, well, all I can say is, wow. Few people will ever find this little show, and you did it. So again, thank you. Well, Vintage Century Idol Hour is also the name of my YouTube channel. If I could get more listeners out there, that would signal to me that I need to broaden my content on that platform. I already have some soothing animations to serve as a background for our show. They're dark and soothing and perfect for bedtime viewing. So if you'd like a little visual with your audio, check out our show on YouTube.
Attention listeners, pardon the interruption. I just need to warn you that this portion of our program contains a number of spoilers.
And now for our story. The film opens with a shot of police swarming the mansion of Norma Desmond. Joe Gillis is floating in her pool, face down, having been shot multiple times. Now, we learn in these opening moments that this story is told by a dead man. Joe serves as our narrator throughout this film, and over the next hour and 45 minutes, he tells us how he wound up in that pool. Well, in life, Joe was a down-and-out screenwriter in Hollywood. He'd pitched some ideas, but they seemed to go nowhere, and he speculated that he had lost his touch. There's no money coming in, and the repo men are after his car. So he dodges them by turning into this driveway and hiding his car in the garage of a decaying mansion. This is a neglected place that he had assumed was abandoned. Well, he starts exploring the property and discovers that no, in fact, it isn't deserted. It's the home of forgotten silent star Norma Desmond and her very weird butler. It's just the two of them. And when she sees Joe on her property, Desmond mistakes him for an undertaker that she's called for her pet monkey who has just died. Yeah, so this is where we see that absurdity, and maybe that's what gets this film categorized as a comedy. I mean, it is pretty outlandish. And speaking of outlandish, let's talk about the mansion for a moment. Now, it's decaying. I mean, we can see that it's not being kept up from the outside. But the most interesting part to me is the inside. We see 2 rooms during Joe's visit, because he does end up going in there. We see Desmond's bedroom, and then we see her drawing room, I guess, or her main living room. I mean, this is a huge mansion. Everything is very large scale. Well, these rooms are fascinating. I mean, let's start with her bedroom. It's very elaborately decorated. Her bed is in the form of a barge, and everything is way over the top. It's as if movie sets have been laid atop each other. Then we've got her drawing room. It's cavernous, and it's also very elaborately decorated, and it has one particularly crazy feature. It's got this huge pipe organ. Now, there's a draft in the house, and as it blows through the pipes of the organ, there's this eerie note that plays softly in the background. I mean, it's really kind of crazy. This setting and Desmond's weird personality make all of this seem sort of like, you know what it seems like? It seems like a dark ride at a state fair or something. Well, it's in this first meeting that we get one of the great lines in all of cinema.
Wait a minute, haven't I seen you before? I know your face.
Get out, or shall I call my servant?
You're Norma Desmond. Used to be in silent pictures, used to be big.
I am big. It's the pictures that got small.
Uh-huh.
Well, when Desmond finds out that Joe's a screenwriter, she literally forces him to read a script that she herself has written on the topic of Salome. She says she wants his opinion of it, that she intends to work with Cecil B. DeMille on it, and that she will give herself the title role. Now, Salome is a beautiful, young, seductive woman, okay, that may have been Norma Desmond at one time, years ago. That isn't her now. Well, all of this tells Joe that this is a woman who has lost her footing in reality. Well, he does read her screenplay, and it's horrible, but Joe doesn't tell her that. Instead, he starts cooking up a scheme to take advantage of the situation. You know, he says that what she really needs to work on this essentially very good script that she's written is a screen doctor to refine, or a script doctor rather, to refine this really strong story that she's written. Well, she decides, very wrongly, it turns out, that she can trust him for this job. And she insists that he work on it there in the mansion, that he actually move in to the mansion while he's working on it. Well, Joe essentially becomes a kept man in no time. Norma falls in love with Joe, and honestly, Joe takes advantage of her loneliness. She pays him very handsomely. She gives him money. She gives him gifts. And meanwhile, he starts learning just how messed up Norma is. She's still getting a lot of fan mail, for example. And that leads her to believe that there's still a public out there who loves her and is awaiting her return to the big screen. Well, it turns out Max, the butler, and her one-time husband and one-time director who made her a star has been writing those letters. I mean, that right there is so strange about this butler. Well, she throws a party at one point, a New Year's Eve party, but there are only 3 attendees, herself, Joe, and Max, the butler. And that's when Joe realizes that she's fallen in love with him. He tries to let her down gently, but Norma gets upset. She slaps him. She runs to her room. She's very distraught. Well, Joe leaves and goes to another party. Now, this is a real party with lively young people his own age. And, we see that he's temporarily escaped Desmond's world. And it's kind of interesting because we see this very stark contrast between, the two worlds, the thriving world of his own generation and the dark world, that insulated world of Norma Desmond. Well, he phones Max from the fun party to have him pack his things. He's decided he's going to leave. But Max tells him that Norma has slit her wrists with a razor. This is very stunning news to Joe. So he returns to the mansion. He returns to Norma. She's laid out in her bed. Her wrists are bandaged up. It's a really sad scene, and their relationship becomes intimate, if you know what I mean. Well, this is a turning point for both of them, and not in a good way. One of the questions that I ask myself when I'm watching a movie is, at what point are the characters' fates sealed? When does the ending of the movie become inevitable? Well, I think in the case of Sunset Boulevard, this is that point. There's no turning back at this point for either of these characters. Well, Norma has Max deliver the edited Salome script to her former director, Cecil B. DeMille, at Paramount. She starts getting calls from Paramount by this guy named Gordon Cole, but she refuses to speak to anyone except DeMille. Well, she never could get a hold of DeMille, so she and Max drive to the studio, and DeMille welcomes her. He's very affectionate toward her. He treats her with great respect, but he sidesteps her questions about the script. He doesn't want to make that movie with her. He's very tactful. Remember, this is Cecil B. DeMille playing himself. So he comes across as this very benevolent, wonderful, caring father type figure. You know what I mean? Well, Max learns that this Cole guy, this Gordon Cole, was only calling her because he wants to rent her vintage car for use in a film. Wow, this is really insulting. I mean, she doesn't know this at the time, but the studio wants the car. They don't want her. Yikes. Well, Norma, still steeped in her delusion of a comeback, undergoes rigorous beauty treatments. Okay, she's getting ready for her close-up. Well, meanwhile, Joe is secretly working on another script. He's working with this gal, Betty Schaefer. She's a script reader at the studio, and they're collaborating. Well, Desmond gets wind of this, and she becomes very jealous. She actually calls Betty, telling her that Joe is a gigolo. Well, Betty finds this kind of hard to believe, and she confronts Joe. He admits that it's true and says that she should forget about him and move on because they were starting to develop feelings for each other. Well, he starts packing at that point. He's really leaving now. He's leaving California. I think he was going to go to Ohio. He was going to leave show business behind. I think he was going to join a newspaper or something in Ohio. Well, they have this big scene, he and Norma threatens to kill herself again. So apparently she's attempted suicide several times. You know, Max makes a comment at one point where they have to make sure there are no knives around. You know, they've got to suicide-proof the house because she's very prone to making these suicide attempts. And, you know, it's a form of manipulation, to be sure. But this time around, Joe is unmoved.
You didn't believe me. Now I suppose you don't think I have the courage.
Oh, sure, if it would make a good scene.
You don't care, do you? But hundreds of thousands of people will care.
Oh, wake up, Norma. You'd be killing yourself to an empty house. The audience left 20 years ago. Now face it.
That's a lie. They still want me.
No, they don't.
What about the studio? What about DeMille?
He was trying to spare your feelings. The studio only wanted to rent your car.
Wanted what?
DeMille didn't have the heart to tell you. None of us has had the heart.
That's a lie. They want me. I get letters every day.
You tell her, Max. Come on, do her that favor. Tell her there isn't going to be any picture. There aren't any fan letters except the ones you write.
That isn't true. Max!
Madame is the greatest star of them all. I will take Mr. Gillis's bags in the car.
You heard him? I'm a star.
Norma, you're a woman of 50. Now grow up. There's nothing tragic about being 50. Not unless you try to be 25.
The greatest star of them all.
Well, Joe disregards Norma's threat, and as he leaves the house, she shoots him. And he falls where? Into the pool. And that's where our story began. Well, here come the police, and Norma is about to be arrested for murder. The mansion is overrun with police and reporters and newsreel cameras. This is a big news story. But she thinks that these are film cameras. She's in such a broken state. I mean, she's had a complete mental break at this point. So she sees all this crowd around her. They're waiting for her, the cameras and the lighting and everything. It's all focused on her. And there's this really, really sad component of this scene. Max, the butler, her former director, the director that made her a star, is at the foot of the stairs, and he's coaxing her down by pretending to direct her. You know, he says at one point, action. And so she makes her way in this very, dramatic way down the staircase, and the cameras are rolling and the paparazzi are there, and she's descending the staircase. And then we have that very famous ending.
I can't go on with the scene. I'm too happy. Mr. DeMille, do you mind if I say a few words? Thank you. I just want to tell you all how happy I am to be back in the studio, making a picture again. You don't know how much I've missed all of you. And I promise you I'll never desert you again. Because after Salome, we'll make another picture and another picture. You see, this is my life. It always will be. There's nothing else. Just us. And the cameras. And those wonderful people out there in the dark. All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
That just might be one of my all-time favorite movie endings. I mean, it's extremely sad, but it's really striking. I mean, you can't get it out of your mind. All right, so that's Sunset Boulevard. It's a dark, strange film. It kind of makes you feel uneasy. You know, it's like a carnival ride, sort of like what I said before. It's like a carnival ride, but it's like an old carnival ride that maybe didn't pass all of its inspections. You know what I mean? Now, All About Eve is a cynical film, but In a way, it has a little bit of a happy ending. You know, Margot Channing, the star at the center of that film, finds happiness outside of show business. There's a happy ending for her. Is there a happy ending for Norma Desmond? Well, that's a question. You know, from an outsider looking in, no, this is a tragedy. But as long as she can remain in that delusion in her own mind, she's living the dream. You know, she thinks her dream has become a reality. She's a star again. Everyone is there waiting for her. And as long as that delusion isn't broken, well, yeah, I guess she'll be happy too. So, in other words, a good time was had by all, except for Joe Gillis, who died in the pool. Well, before we get to my official rating of Sunset Boulevard, let's take a moment to hear from our newest pretend sponsor, the National Safety Council, with this important message about seatbelts.
Careful driving is a sign of an intelligent grown-up. Handling a car recklessly is kid stuff, so be a responsible driver. The life you save may be your own.
Buckle up for safety, buckle up. Buckle up for safety, always buckle up. Pull your seat belt snug, give an extra tug. Buckle up for safety, buckle up.
Buckle up for safety, buckle up. Buckle up for safety, always buckle up. Show the world you care by the belt you wear. Buckle up for safety when you're driving. Buckle up for safety, buckle up. Buckle up for safety, always buckle up. Put your mind at ease, tell your riders please. Get your seat belts buckled, everybody buckle up.
The National Safety Council says, if you don't have seatbelts, get them. If you do have seatbelts, use them. Seatbelts can and do save lives every day.
Buckle up for safety, everybody buckle up.
Hey everybody, this is a great time to tell you what our featured film next week is going to be. The Day the Earth Stood Still from 1951. Now, I'm really looking forward to this one. This is our first science fiction film in the series, and as of right now, I still haven't seen it. So we all have the same homework assignment. Let's all watch it at the same time, shall we? And then we'll do our usual deep dive on next week's episode. I'll meet you there. Oh, hey, Rodney, I just thought of something.
What's that?
We forgot to record a new overview of my rating system.
Oh, no.
Well, I mean, it's not a disaster. We'll just have to play the one with Lorenzo again.
I'll cue that up right now.
Jennifer, please tell everyone about our rating system.
Our scale is pretty simple. We classify a film as either unwatchable, watchable, or rewatchable. An unwatchable film is really bad. In other words, it's unwatchable. A watchable film is one that's basically okay. It's entertaining, a pleasant way to spend some time, but nothing special. A rewatchable film is one that's really good, and it has enough depth and layers to reward multiple viewings.
Is that it?
No, one more thing. I have a worksheet that helps me calculate the rating. I essentially award points, or what I call diamonds, to films based on 5 factors: story, character development, writing, pace, and discussability. Now that's where I consider whether or not there's enough depth to a story to generate a lot of discussion.
Anything else? Because this is dragging on.
No, I think that's it.
Then let's get on with the show.
All right, so let's go over my rating. I'm going to cut to the chase here because this is a 5-diamond film all the way down the line. Let me break it down. Story. Was this an interesting and entertaining story worth telling? 5 diamonds. This wasn't just an interesting story, it was a fascinating story. Weird, dark, sad, unsettling. I mean, you cannot take your eyes off this film, and the themes are very worthwhile. So what are the themes? Well, there are many of them. The price of fame, the corrupting effect of adulation and vanity, the relentless march of time, the fragility of the human mind. We could go on and on. There are so many layers here. And it all unfolded in a really compelling way. The fact that our narrator was dead the whole time, that was an interesting choice that the writers made, but I think it was a good choice because it turns out that the dead man was the only reliable narrator that we had. It was a great story, well told. Character development. Were the characters dimensional? Did their actions ring true? 5 diamonds. These characters were brilliant and fascinating. Norma Desmond gets all the attention in this film, which is understandable and valid. But who's really the main character here? Is it her? I don't think so. I think it's Joe Gillis. This is his story, not Norma Desmond's. He's not a good man. He's all too willing to live in Desmond's make-believe world as long as she's paying for it. But he's also the one who changes. He breaks the illusion. When he tells her about the fake fan mail and the fact that DeMille was just being polite and had no intention of making a movie with her, he broke the illusion and he died as a result. Norma Desmond's world is so rarefied that once you're sucked in, you can't survive in the normal world. It's fascinating. And then we have Max, the butler, who was once married to her. And, as I said before, he was the director who made her a star. Well, he couldn't survive outside of her orbit either. We could spend an hour plumbing the depths of these characters. So definitely 5 diamonds for character development. Writing. Was the dialogue beautiful, funny, poignant, and/or thought-provoking? 5 diamonds. There are some really poignant lines in this film. One of the lines that I like is, no one ever leaves a star, Norma says. And maybe the most beautiful line of all comes at the end when she says, there's nothing else, just us and the cameras and those wonderful people in the dark. What a beautiful line that is. And sad. It's a sad line, but it's a beautiful line. Or what about when Joe tells Norma that if she killed herself, she'd be playing to an empty house because the adoring fans are all gone. These are sad, painful lines, beautifully written. Pace. At what speed did the story unfold? Excellent. 5 diamonds. This story flies by. I think it's an hour and 45 minutes. It doesn't seem that long. Discussability. Does the story have enough depth to explore and analyze through discussion? 5 diamonds. Like some of the other great films that we've explored in this series, Casablanca, Citizen Kane, people have been talking about Sunset Boulevard for years. As I mentioned a moment ago, there are a lot of layers to peel away here and examine, and great fodder for discussion. And that brings us to a perfect 5 diamond score. Very easily a rewatchable film. If you haven't seen Sunset Boulevard and are on this journey through Golden Age films with me, well, this is in the canon and really can't be skipped. Lucky for us, it's really good too. I watched it out on Amazon Prime.
And now it's time for Idle Hour Trivia.
Okay, tonight's trivia question is about Gloria Swanson. Gloria Swanson was nominated for Best Actress for her role as Norma Desmond, but that wasn't her first nomination. That was actually her third. She was nominated for Best Actress in both 1929 and 1931. How many times did she win? A, twice, B, 1 time, or C, no times? Put your thinking caps on, everyone. 20 seconds. Okay, Rodney, what do you think? How many times did Gloria Swanson win an Academy Award for Best Actress?
No times.
Yes, you are correct, Rodney. Gloria Swanson never won an Academy Award. She was nominated in 1929 for Best Actress in Sadie Thompson and in 1931 for The Trespasser. And then, of course, she was nominated for Sunset Boulevard, too. All is not lost, though. She did win a Golden Globe for Best Actress for her portrayal of Norma Desmond. Now, I think I mentioned back in our episode on All About Eve that Swanson was up against Bette Davis and Anne Baxter for Best Actress that year. They all lost to Judy Holliday, who won for her role in Born Yesterday.
Yes, a wonderful film.
Wonderful film?
Yes.
Born Yesterday?
Yes.
Oh, Rodney, that film is completely unwatchable. I really don't like that one. William Holden was in that film too. In that same year, he was in one of the best films of all time, Sunset Boulevard, and one of the worst films, in my opinion, Born Yesterday.
I think I can get you to change your mind about that.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I'd like to do a dramatic reading of a line from Born Yesterday. This is a line delivered by William Holden as Paul Varel.
Oh, you want to do another dramatic reading?
I'd love to, thank you. I want everybody to be smart. I want them to be as smart as they can be. A world full of ignorant people is too dangerous to live in. End scene.
That didn't change my mind, Rodney. It's still a horrible film.
There are no horrible films, just people who don't understand.
Who said that?
Me, Rodney.
It's the first full week in May, and that means my favorite time of the year has finally arrived. May, June, and July are the best, aren't they? I mean, I wait for these months all year long. I literally count the days beginning in January, and here we are at last. We've made it through the long slog of snow and gray, miserable days to blue, bright skies and green leaves on the trees. I went for a walk today and I actually got hot. I love that. I stopped to rest for a minute in the shade of this little cluster of trees, and it wasn't windy, but there were these soft breezes that would come by and they would kind of blow through the branches of the trees and rustle the leaves. And it was just so peaceful and quiet and lovely. We take things like shade for granted. But remember, in the winter, there is no shade really because there are no leaves. And of course, there isn't that soft rustling sound of a breeze in the trees because those branches are bare. Well, all of this is to say that everything is as beautiful as it will ever be this year. And time goes by so fast. I really want to make the most of these 3 months so they don't get away from me. I already have some trips planned for this summer, and gosh, it's so fun to think about trips, isn't it? Some of these are just a couple of day trips, but, they're still fun. They get me out of Missouri, which is always kind of an adventure. So my first trip is to one of my favorite places in the whole world, Bonita Springs, Florida. Now, I'm going to have a lot more to say on that later because, breaking news, I think I'm going to try to do a travel vlog for that. I love watching travel vlogs, but I've never done one. So I don't know. Would you watch that if I put something like that out on YouTube? I mean, if I do it, it's going to be clunky and clumsy, I'm sure, because I've never done one, but I don't know. It might be kind of fun. Well, then after that trip, I'm off to Omaha, Nebraska. That's just a day trip, but my niece Mary and I go there every year to visit their amazing zoo. They've got one of the world's best zoos there, and we've been going there for years and years, and that is another one of my favorite places, so I'm looking forward to that. Next up is a trip to Walnut, Iowa for their huge annual antique fair in June. Now, my niece Annie and I are going to that. We've been there before, but it's been a couple of years. And, she sent me a text a couple of weeks ago for an ad that she got. And she said, "Hey, should we go?" And I'm like, of course we should. So we're planning that one. And then I have another trip that I'm really excited about because this is to a place that I've never been before. Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm visiting my wonderful, wonderful friend Leanne there, and I am so looking forward to that trip. And then I'll wrap up my summer with another trip to Florida. I always try to book in my summers with a trip to Florida in the beginning and a trip to Florida at the end. Well, so, the summer is really the focal point of my year. I plan around it, literally. I plan my personal planning systems to follow the academic year cycle. So then I start a new planner in July. In effect, my year begins and ends in the summer. So right now, as we're entering May, I'm starting to put together my planning and notebook stack for the coming year. And that got me to thinking, when did planners really become a thing? Now, I know we all use digital planners. I mean, I even use digital planners, like on my phone and on my computer and everything. But I still go old school with paper-based systems too. I am a person that likes to write things down, on paper with a pencil. I may be the last person alive that does that, but that is just part of my process. Now, for years and years, paper planners were the business accessory that we couldn't do without. And even now, paper planners and bullet journals and that kind of thing, they do remain popular in certain circles. So when did structured planners become a thing? Well, I know calendars and desk diaries have been around for centuries, but what I'm most interested in are planners that resemble what we have today. Calendars with structured pages for to-do lists, for planning, for habit tracking, goal setting, all of those kinds of things. Now, I've been digging around on the internet, and I'm still not sure that I found the first example of this kind, but I did find some early examples on the National Museum of American History website. There was a planning system for lawyers out there called Lawyer's Day. And from what I can tell by this really bad photo of a prototype of that planning system, each page in the planner was devoted to a single day. And so down the left edge of the page were the hours of the day. And it looks like they spanned from 8 o'clock to the end of the workday at 5 o'clock. So no evening hours or early morning hours were on there. And then to the right of that column, there were other columns, things for notes, as well as, billable hours, recording billable hours. Remember, this was for lawyers. Well, I saw some other calendar books from this era. This would be in the 1950s that contained much of that same information, as well as expanded notes sections and that staple of modern planners, motivational quotes. Well, this Lawyer's Day planner was put out by Dorney Printers, which ultimately became Daytimers Incorporated. Now, there's a name that I know, right? Now, here's what it says on Daytimer's website. In 1952, lawyer Morris Perkin walked into Dorney Printing and ordered a desk diary that he had been using to keep track of time spent on clients. The idea turned into a partnership between Perkin and Dorney's, and they formed Daytimers Incorporated. Lawyer's Day becomes the first in a successful series of diary memo planning and time record books. In the 1960s, daytimer planners are created for other professionals, such as accountants, doctors, and executives. The business grew from a small family operation into a substantial business with 250,000 customers, almost exclusively through the medium of direct mail. Now, over the years, there were several mergers and acquisitions, and so if we fast forward to today, Daytimers is part of a family of brands that include some names that you may recognize. Mead, 5 Star, Trapper Keeper. Remember Trapper Keepers? Well, I'm a child of the 80s, so I remember Trapper Keepers very well. At a Glance, Cambridge, and Day Runner. That's all part of the same brand family. Now, incidentally, I'm using a Cambridge monthly planner right now as part of my planning system. Now, one of the things out on YouTube that draws me like a tractor beam is when people do planner hauls. I don't know why. I just love watching them. But nearly all of those hauls take place in December because that's when most people start their planning cycles. They're in January, so they're gearing up in December to start the new year. Well, I'm going to try to do one myself as soon as I get my stack all together, a haul video. When will that be exactly? I don't know. Before July. I know that for sure. Well, if you have any interest in that at all, please be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. If you're on pins and needles for that episode, I don't know. I think it could be fun. Oh no, can it be the clock already? Where does the time go? Well, what did you think of this episode, Rodney?
It was brilliant. A masterpiece.
Rodney, you do know that I don't have the ability to give you any kind of a pay raise, right?
What do you mean?
Never mind. Hey, I wanted to talk to you about last week. We had some awkwardness last week when we were signing off.
Yes, I know. You kept telling me to say goodbye. I still don't understand what was going on.
Yeah, that's what I thought, but that's okay, because I'm going to give you a model to follow.
A model?
Yeah, I want you to listen to this. This is from one of our old shows. It's how Lorenzo and I used to sign off. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Say goodbye, Lorenzo.
Goodbye, Lorenzo.
See how we do it? It's an homage to the old George Burns and Gracie Allen sign-off.
I don't get it. Why would Lorenzo say his own name when signing off?
That's the joke.
What?
Well, this is feeling less fun as we go along. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in and hanging out with us this evening. Have a great week. And when your week is through, come on back and see us. We'll be waiting for you. Okay, Rodney, now say this exactly, word for word. Goodbye, Rodney.
Well, okay. Rodney, say this exactly, word for word. Goodbye, Rodney.
Well, we're nearly there.